I am a giant How to Train Your Dragon fan. I have loved this franchise for a decade. I am deeply and passionately in this world. We saw this film, and I had the highest of expectations because the first two mean the world to me. So the third one I was nervous. It's the first trilogy I've been nervous about because landing How to Train Your Dragon 3 is a hell of a landing. So today we have a hero here at Collider Heroes, Hiccup himself. Jay Baruchel, it is an absolute pleasure, man.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Dude, deep love with this series, man.
Thanks very much.
And
I'm
this
glad
last
you
one
dig it.
landed.
It's a special film. Yeah, it's a real special film. I think it's, for my money, it's the best one.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's an exquisite trilogy.
I agree.
And it has been interesting. What was different for you about this part of Hiccup's journey?
Just that it tests everything that he's fought for, right? The sort of defining, driving aspect of his life has been this utopia of finding a way to get dragons and Vikings to not just coexist, but to make each other stronger and all this stuff. And in this one, he's put in this kind of existential crisis, and he has to ask himself if this utopia he's fought for is actually the best thing for everyone. And it's kind of a heartbreaking spot for him to find himself, because that's how he's defined. Everything he's done is to create and preserve and foster this way of life that, in fact, is probably wrong. And I'm like, that's a heavy, sad thing to take on. And it's also kind of a nuanced gray area theme, I think, which is like, again, that's something we've luckily never shied away from in these movies. We always end up, and I think that's kind of why they rise above the din the way that they do, is because they have the ring of truth to them,
Yeah.
Now, animated films, I already have a hard time wrapping my brain around acting them, because you're acting either opposite like a tennis ball or a speaker or a microphone. It's really hard.
Usually just a microphone.
You're in a sound booth.
Possibly the literal aesthetic opposite of the hidden world, the beauty and majesty of the hidden world, is a recording studio just covered in like sound blankets and a microphone.
The hidden world turned into Burning Man, and I love that.
Yes,
at one point I was like, yes, the playa, we're here. And instead you're in a sound booth.
Yes.
Now you're acting opposite not just a microphone, but your character you act opposite a lot is not speaking.
Yeah, correct.
And your relationship is incredible. What was it like as an actor to form a relationship with a character that doesn't speak English opposite a microphone?
Yeah. Well, it's two. Luckily, I had three things to draw upon. I'm a terrible daydreamer. I'm like crippled by my imagination and have been my whole life. So it wasn't necessarily hard for me to fill in those particular blanks. Also, I've lived with cats all my life, and now dogs as well. And so I have a whole bunch of practice of like baby talking to an animal and understanding that, and then Dean DeBlois, our incredible writer director, one of the world's great artists and storytellers, he kind of has such a specific instinct for how everything should look and feel, that when he kind of walks me through it, I see it all. So even if it's just him, a script, and me on Skype, literally on Skype, because it's coming, all of it comes from his head and his heart, it's all so vivid that it might as well be all there. And so it's very easy to imagine myself in that situation, because I get to work with him, and he's incredible.
I thought this one landed the anticipation and the build of waiting 4 years, and it didn't disappoint. And
good.
Your character's arc evolves in such a beautiful way that each time he becomes more of a chief, he becomes more of a leader.
Every time.
Was there anything that spoke to you differently in the first script and the last, as you evolved as playing Hiccup, like you as a man growing through this character?
Definitely, because I think I did my first recording session for Hiccup 12 years ago, so it would have been like July or August of 2007.
Wow.
And for me, it was all about remembering. When I was doing the character then, I was remembering what it was to be kind of raised in the margins, to feel, if not completely at odds, to not necessarily feel like I had a ton in common with the society I was born into, right? Like, because I was like, I had no interest in playing hockey, and that's what every boy does where I'm from. And so I had a strong, and by the way, I also knew that like all these things that were kind of, I was told by kids were failings of mine when I was in elementary school. As I grew up, realized these things are actually virtues, right? So I was kind of channeling all of that the first time I played Hiccup. At this point, as I'm going to be 37 in April, I have far more responsibility than I did when I was 24, just like Hiccup. And so kind of neatly, it somehow has dovetailed with my life in a pretty cool way.
That's gorgeous.
I know you're a Punisher man.
Yeah, that's my
So
favorite.
this is a comic book show, and I can't ignore the fact that a Punisher fan is sitting before me.
Yeah.
You wrote, and I love the arc you developed very quickly in the Halloween special.
Thanks, man.
It was
Thanks.
very succent. You immediately knew the character. You immediately
Awesome.
knew Frank.
Thank you.
What was it like sitting down as a comic fan going, this is a Marvel comic I'm writing?
It's the craziest. Like first just getting an email that was like some dude's name at marvel.com. It's like, I get a screen cap. It's like image of my inbox. I've lived long enough to see that, right? Whether it yielded anything at all is like a neither here nor there. But then in fact to actually get to write him, I think with any superhero, you don't necessarily pick them so much as they pick you, right? And, my dad was a big Superman fan, and so I always have a soft spot for Superman, but Frank was who spoke to me off of the shelf, when I was by myself in a comic shop. It was Frank I always went to, and he's never left me. And so to have gotten the chance to write him is just like, I could die tomorrow, man. It's the coolest. And thank you for the kind words, because I'm super proud of it.
For those who want to track that down, it's the Avengers Halloween special. It came out last fall, and it was your Marvel writing debut.
It was indeed.
But not your first rodeo with comic book
No,
love.
no.
Who's another character who maybe deserves some more love out there?
I'd have to probably say Captain Canuck. It's just like, he's if you grow up in Canada, he's always around, okay? But he's likely on the periphery because he's been in a street fight for shelf space in comic shops in Canada since 1975 or whenever he first came out. Like Batman and Iron Man and Cap are all front of the store. Canuck, you have to find him. However, in spite of that, in spite of the disadvantage of being an independently funded Canadian comic in a world dominated by DC and Marvel, he never went away. And a few years ago, I got involved in this really cool company called Chapter House out of Toronto, which is this 100% Canadian-owned and operated comic book company that has the mission of taking all these kind of weird golden age Canadian superheroes, because we have a very, very strange comic book history. Like, for example, one of our big booms was in World War II.
Nirvana of the Northern Lights, right?
Yes, so we weren't allowed to have no American comic books were coming in. There was a paper quota, so nobody was going to print anything that they didn't need to. So all of a sudden, this necessity for comics was created, and so you had a real boom in the 40s with Johnny Canuck and Nelvana and all these different characters, and then it went away. And then in the 70s, you have a mini boom with Canuck and Northgard, and then it went away. And so what we're trying to do at Chapter House is put them all together in a shared universe, which is kind of unparalleled. And so I've gotten to write a bunch of Captain Canuck. I did the bulk of the writing on this 4-issue arc called Canuck Year One, which is his origin story. And I'm really kind of psyched and proud to say that my writing partner and I have gotten the official go-ahead to write the first Captain Canuck feature.
What?
And
Congratulations,
so it's gonna
man.
thank you. We're very excited. We're sort of our frame of reference is kind of those really, really great animations that WB does with DC, sort of feature-length cartoons, Dark Knight Returns, all that stuff. And so that will afford us to take the chances that we can take, because you can go a bit harder in animation than you can in real life. But we also think it's a great format to sort of intro that character to a new generation. So we're really, really excited.
That's fabulous. I work at a shop, so I've seen that the affection is very real.
Yes,
people were very excited.
It's legit.
He started coming around.
Oh,
again.
amazing! That's what I want to
That's so
hear.
exciting.
Yeah, he means a lot to us.
And more as these characters evolve and the world evolves in this comic culture, more people are able to translate straight from page to screen and vice
Completely.
versa. You're also directing.
Yeah.
So you're getting the on paper, on writing, and what's it like to juggle that many different styles of, do you wake up one day and you're like, directing day, hat, comic day, hat?
No, it's more like I feel like I'm just running a racket, and I'm like I'm waiting for the other email, which is like, who thought you could do anything? But it's like my house is just covered in movies and comic books, and this is how I unwind. I enjoy them. My goal since I was a kid was to be able to make a living doing that, right? My mom said to me when I was little, find something you would do for free and find a way to get paid to do it. That's the sort of rule for a happy life, I think. And so the fact that I get to not just enjoy movies and comics, but get to help create them is a special thing, because like, my shelf of movies and comics, now some of them are mine, and that's a pretty cool thing.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I gotta know. I mean, I'm looping back to Punisher because it's such a character that is so important to so many people.
Yeah.
You've seen him evolve from Dolph Lundgren to Tom Jane to John Bernthal, and you've seen the military adapt his iconography and have that be so important to so many people. What was it like for you the first time you saw him pop up on Daredevil and he was so fleshed out, so nuanced, and he looked like John Romita's drawing?
Yeah, no, I gotta be careful how I choose my words here. I'm not a huge fan of the most recent iteration.
Okay.
It's a bit too far away from what I think it should be. However, he is also the superhero who has had the most trouble getting translated, I think. I don't know that any single Punisher iteration has been right. I think there's been aspects that each thing has gotten right. So I think like Lundgren is the best to play him, but I'd say the action and violence in Warzone is the kind of closest to the comics that I've seen. The Travolta weirdo one probably had the most compelling story, but I think like they each get something right, but a bunch of shit wrong. And so I kind of still think that the world hasn't seen Punisher the way he should be seen.
That's the mark of fandom right
Yeah,
there.
they
Where you're
always
like,
finding
I like
pieces.
this, and the perfect one exists in my head.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I think really the Punisher story the world really needs to see, and that would lend itself to cinema the easiest, the most readily, is the Garth Ennis Punisher Born, which is his origin story in Vietnam.
Yeah.
That is a simple, straight ahead, you need to know nothing about any shared universe. That's a movie that works whether you give a shit about comics or not, I think,
Now, your movie, the next directing experience you've got going on is Random Acts of Violence, which is a very Punisher-y title.
Yes, it is. Also an adaptation of a graphic novel.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've now adapted a character to novel, and now
Yes.
you're adapting a graphic novel. How does it translate in your brain adapting someone else's work versus adapting a character's work?
Yeah, it's tricky because they obviously did a lot of stuff right and created something special for me to connect to it enough to think that it could be a movie, right? But I also have to let our creative process, my writing partner Jesse and I, play itself out as well. And so if there's an idea that is right for our movie, that is like foreign to or doesn't come from the source material, if it's right, it's right, know. And so and Jimmy Palmiotti, who wrote Random Acts of Violence, has been incredibly cool and our biggest booster the whole time. He has read every iteration of that script and has always given it his seal of approval. And he came up to Toronto on day one of our shoot and gave us his blessing. And so it's like, you have to remember that they're different forms, completely different forms. So whenever someone says, "Oh, the book was better," it's apples and oranges. Like I don't know that what makes a book good is different than what makes a movie good, and all that kind of stuff. And so we tried our best to honor the idea that he created, and then some. And so we're sort of in the latter stages of the edit right now, which means we'll be posting it very, very soon, and then that means the next step is for it to come out. So hopefully late summer, early fall. Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
people killing it in comics in any direction. I'm always so excited to see like a sweaty do well and like a graphic novel come from that and like the
Likewise.
evolution.
Like, we're happy for you. We're happy for Jimmy Palmiotti. We're happy for comics. All of it's great.
Like hearing these names said out loud and like Entertainment Tonight is like, yes, we did it. This is happening.
Correct.
So,
Good.
is there any property that you love that you think needs more love? You're making Captain Canuck more of a name. Is there any comic that you've always been like, I want the light shined on that?
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm not saying me, but someone I think could make a really, really, really authentic adaptation of From Hell.
Ooh.
I think From Hell is such a singular, committed work of art. Every centimeter of that book is part of this cohesive, bleak, heavy fucking work of art, man. And I think it's brilliant, and I think it's compelling, and it has, and by the way, the Hughes Brothers movie is cool, but it has nothing in common except for the title. It's its own cool, weird, trippy, psychedelic thing. From Hell, the book has none of that, and I was like, I would love to see a black and white adaptation of From Hell. And so I think it has to be black and white if you're going to do it. So that's a movie I've been waiting to see since I read that book.
So check out
Make it happen.
From Hell, check out Random Acts of Violence this fall, and check out How to Train Your Dragon. A movie made me cry like 3 times.
Oh,
man.
good.
I'm in deep love with this franchise.
We're all sadists, so
I appreciate it.
if you don't cry, we didn't do our job.
It's This Is Us with dragons. Like, it got me all the way through,
great.
man. And like the hidden world itself is a beautiful,
It's gorgeous,
transcendent
right?
place.
Yeah,
it
agreed.
brought me back to the playa.
Agreed.
So thank you so much, man.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for being
much
part
for
of this
being
whole
here.
franchise.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me,
And I
guys.
can't wait for this movie.
Thank you very much.
I really, y'all have to see How to Train Your Dragon 3.
It really
is
changed
so good.
Like, I've loved this franchise for a decade, and it's so hard when something like lands right to really get it across. It comes out later this month. See How to Train Your Dragon. Believe in dragons and heroes. That is what we're here for.